Hello, my name is Ryan Zinn with the Fair World Project. Today I'm with Deanna Hoff, farmer from eastern Montana and representative of La Via Campesina and the National Family Farmers Coalition. Deanna, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. Maybe to start, Deanna, can you tell us a little bit about your work and experience?
All right. Experience, I guess I have been an activist since I was a very young person, and not from a farming family in my father's generation, but my grandparents were farmers and held farmland, and so I always wanted to be a farmer, and eventually I did become a farmer, and I am working on a lot of levels for farmers and farm families and the environment, from the local to the state to the regional to the national, through the National Family Farm Coalition and through the international, in Via Campesina as the co-coordinator of the North American region of Via Campesina. And we work for food sovereignty, which encompasses a whole system that doesn't include just farmers, which is the primary focus of our members, but we talk about food, we talk about human rights, we talk about women and youth and agroecology and the whole holistic system that makes this world livable for everyone, and for everyone within the system to have the opportunity to live a life with dignity.
What's the history of La Via Campesina?
Back during the days of the GATT, when the world decided, the powers that be, that all agriculture was going to be big and industrial, and that peasant agriculture was not productive and a thing of the past, a group of farmers, young people, activists got together and decided that they were not going to be a part of the system, and that they were going to create an alternative system where traditional knowledge was valued, where care of Mother Earth was a top priority, and where people mattered and were not going to be expelled from the land, made to disappear just because a new model of agriculture and a new neoliberal system was going to take over strictly for profit at the expense of the earth and everything that lives on it.
Mm-hmm. How many members does La Via Campesina have?
300 million is our closest estimate, and we're from 77 countries and have more prospective members waiting to be brought into the fold in our next international assembly in 2 years.
We're here in New York as part of the mobilizations and marches around climate change. Can you talk a little bit about the impacts that climate change is having on small farmers?
Well, all over the world there is an impact. The people who live on the coastlines are seeing the rising seas are inundating them. In south parts of the country like Bangladesh, they're flooding in one end of the country, they have a drought on the other end of the country, and the rivers are drying up. There's more desertification in various places. There are more massive, huge climatic disasters happening all over the world, and it impacts people's livelihoods, their access to food, their access to services. And I finally got to experience climate change on our own farm this year for the first time in 35 years. We don't have any crops to market at all because of a late, cold, wet spring planting season, and then no rain, and then a bad hailstorm with high wind that damaged crops, and then followed by an abnormal amount of rain. We usually get 12 inches in a year if we're lucky, and some places, on our farm it was 8 inches, on other neighboring farms they got as much as 12 inches of rain, so crops just spoiled in the field, or the grain crops sprouted or molded and are unsaleable, so the bean company won't take our beans, the elevator won't take our wheat, so we are going to have a lot of grazing and a lot to put back into the soil, but it's not going to go directly into our income for the year.
Mhm. Several years back, La Via Campesina came out with one of their important titles, like Small Farmers Feed the World and Cool the Planet. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Sure, that has to do with, first of all, methods of consumption, the way they farm, not using a huge amount of fossil fuels. But more than that is they're building the soil so that it is a better place for carbon to be absorbed into, because it is a living entity and it is not just something to hold the plants upright. And they understand that. They understand the cycle of nature far more than industrial monocultures, which basically don't care about building the soil.
And we hear a lot, both in university settings as well as in the media, that we need industrial agriculture to actually feed the world. What is your thinking on that?
You must have been listening to Secretary Vilsack in his "I have two sons" speech.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. No, it's really not true. Industrial agriculture doesn't care about feeding people, so if they produce more food, people who don't have any money aren't going to be able to buy that food anyway. You can go to markets all over the world and see an abundance of food in the market and people starving in the vicinity because they can't afford to buy the food. Give people the access to land, give them the means to produce food for themselves, and you will see that situation changing dramatically.
And so, the United Nations is meeting tomorrow here in New York. There's the ongoing Conference of Parties, the COP meetings. What is the message that Via Campesina is taking to the United Nations and decision makers?
That peasant agriculture can cool the climate and feed the world. That the false solutions that are presented are only solutions that are made to put some money in some big corporation's pocket. But they're really not solutions, that the solutions are here, they've been presented. Scientists readily accept that building the soil is the way you change the climate.
Dina, you mentioned a number of false solutions. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Sure. Climate smart agriculture, the co-optation of CSA, community supported agriculture for one. It isn't smart agriculture. Perhaps it's smart in the fact that it's a way to put more money into corporate pockets, but it does nothing to solve the climate crisis or the food crisis or any of the other environmental crises that are currently going on in the world. It's a rehash of the Green Revolution, and we see how well that worked in ending hunger and protecting the environment. Paying people so that you can keep polluting, is that a solution? You pay people to do the right thing so you can keep doing the wrong thing? That's a false solution. Telling people that the only way they can be fed is through GMOs and more industrial agriculture, that's an outright lie, not a solution.
Who's behind so-called climate smart agriculture?
Well, in the UN, they started this little group which basically didn't take into account small farmers, but it's in large industrial organizations, commodity organizations, institutions, big institutions in the country. Because I think that they're really afraid that they're going to be losing their power and their control over not just agriculture, but of consumers as well. When people finally get the real facts and find out that they're not being fed properly, that the environment is not being taken care of, that the soil is not being built, and that humans and Mother Earth are the losers, people are going to be up in arms, or they should be up in arms if they aren't, and I think that's part of our job, is to make them see that they have to be part of the solution too.
What are some of the biggest obstacles or threats that small farmers, pastoralists, indigenous peoples are facing right now?
Other than really bad weather, it would be land grabbing for one. They're being displaced and expelled and murdered often because somebody wants their land for a better use or for the natural resources that is on that piece of land or territory. And apparently they would, in the powers that be, perhaps it seems like they're trying to move us to a world where there's no place that's safe and nothing is sacred, including human life.
Mhm. What are some of the policy changes or proposals that La Via Campesina is pushing forward?
A real agrarian reform that takes into fact that farmers need access to land and resources, and once they get on the land, they need support. They need actual research that is proven science and not science that's paid for by Monsanto or another giant corporation who's supporting a land-grant college. They need to have fair markets, fair prices. They need to know that the trade policies are not going to allow huge surpluses in northern countries to be imported into their countries, destroying their own domestic markets so that they don't have a chance to make a living. We need a lot more farmers, and we need to value traditional knowledge and traditional farmers exchanges, and to see how important these farmer organizations are in teaching each other and learning from each other's successes and mistakes.
Mhm. For folks in the United States, what are some things that they can do in their own personal lives, or how can they take action?
What I used to tell my children when they were growing up, if you want things to turn out right, if you want to learn, if you want to be safe, there's two words: pay attention. Know what is happening in your local government, in your local environment. Read, listen to many different sources, and have enough of an education, even if it's a self-education, to be able to figure out what makes sense and what doesn't. If you don't understand what something is, research it. Be involved. You have to be an activist at some level, whether it's buying organic, whether it's growing your own garden, whether it's riding your bicycle instead of driving or walking. Everything that we do makes a difference, and people have to value that, no matter how small the action.
Dina, where can people learn more about La Via Campesina?
You can go to our website at viacampesina.org, or you can go to the National Family Farm Coalition's website, NFFC, at nffc.net, and that also has links to Via Campesina information. And the National Family Farm Coalition is one of 6 organizations in the U.S. that are members of Via Campesina North America.
Well, Dina, thank you so much for joining us today, and best of luck.
Thanks for having me, Edward.